Anti-nutrients in vegetables are something that's commonly overlooked, and although there are a few common anti-nutrients, when you look at the big picture and kind of really analyze all of the anti-nutrients, it's very apparent we're not supposed to be eating these foods, and that I will explain that reason later in the video about how it's mainly because of modern agricultural methods and how we transform these foods as opposed to just plants in general and how wild plants used to be. So we're going to start with glucosinolates, which are primarily found in cruciferous vegetables. And glucosinolates, they stimulate free radical damage when fed to animals. They're resistant to steaming and microwave, can be eliminated by boiling, but they form isothiocyanates, indoles, and nitriles. Isothiocyanates stimulate detoxification enzymes, and they interfere with DNA segregation through mitosis, resulting in cell death. To varying degrees of inflammation. They also prohibit iodine uptake by the thyroid, which can be fixed by consuming more iodine, but thioureas, which are formed by isothiocyanates, inhibit synthesis of thyroid hormone entirely. So that's where we develop goiter from consuming too many cruciferous vegetables, and I think I've heard of it in people drinking kale shakes every day. Indoles, formed by glucosinolates, inhibit ATP production and have conflicting effects on estrogen metabolism. And I'll talk about the estrogen inhibiting stuff a little bit later. It's clear that these foods have negative effects with estrogen in the body, but it's not 100% clear on what that actually entails. Nitriles stimulate detoxification enzymes. They have cyanide-related toxicity resulting in decreased food intake, impaired kidney function, impaired energy production, increased blood clotting, and increased liver weight. And this was from studies done on, I think, concentrated amounts fed to rats. Unlikely to result from food in this case. But there's definitely some small negative things present in all of these substances that are in cruciferous vegetables. So for each of these guys, please do your own Googling, do your own research. I'm not going to try to touch on them too much. I mean, this could probably be like an hour-long video. So alpha amylase inhibitors, which are primarily found in grains, flours, and breads, and please, like, I can't list all the foods that these are in because there's some that there probably weren't online or I didn't find them in my research, so please Google what foods contain these anti-nutrients because I'm not going to list all of them. Alpha amylase inhibitors have shown benefits to a therapeutic effect in people with obesity and diabetes, but there has been an effect on the pancreas in regards to pancreatic hypertrophy shown in animals. Although it hasn't translated directly to humans, there is something that, I mean, according to that research, that leads me to believe there are negative effects long-term on the pancreas from consuming alpha amylase inhibitors. And it makes sense, a lot of these anti-nutrients affect digestive enzymes. Protease inhibitors, which are found in chickpeas, broccoli, lentils, Brussels sprouts, nuts, potatoes, spinach, oats, corn, cucumber, pineapple, rice, soybeans, whole grain wheat, barley, almonds, a lot of stuff, and there's probably more that I didn't list. So what these do is they inhibit digestive enzymes like chymotrypsin and trypsin, and protease inhibitors and a few of the things I'm going to talk about next kind of are what ultimately lead to leaky gut syndrome, because these foods inhibit digestion and when consumed in large amounts frequently lead to intestinal permeability and the food being attacked by antibodies pretty much to try to get it out of the body because the body can't digest it. And those two things are lectins and saponins, other things that really inhibit enzymes. And these lectins and saponins, which are found in kidney beans, soybeans, wheat, peanuts, tomatoes, potatoes, legumes, corn, quinoa, nightshades, vegetable oils, legumes, asparagus, spinach, onion, garlic, tea, oats. These pretty much cause inflammation that leads to antigens in your body. Very, very high antibody responses. When this was studied in rats, it's rapidly transported across the intestinal wall into systemic circulation where it's deposited in blood and lymphatic vessels. So incredibly high amounts of inflammation when consuming these foods in large enough amounts to inhibit digestion. Two big ones that I talk about a lot and I'm very familiar with are phytic acid and oxalates. They both bind to minerals. Phytic acid is more associated with iron, zinc, and manganese, which is found in rice bran, wheat, grains, legumes, beans, nuts, plant oils. Reason a lot of vegans are deficient in iron and zinc. Oxalates, which inhibit calcium, magnesium, and potassium absorption, are found in spinach, bran, rhubarb, beets, potatoes, nuts, cocoa, okra, sweet potatoes. And in regards to oxalates, calcium absorption is definitely removed, and you will see people cite that sometimes. Sometimes you'll hear the opposite. People say, oh, I get so much calcium from my spinach. I'm like, do you not know about oxalates? They also slightly inhibit magnesium absorption. I'm not sure what percentage that is, but they definitely do. And potassium is likely affected as well. I haven't found concrete evidence on that. But phytic acid and oxalates are two big reasons to not consume certain nuts and modern vegetables. And it's really a matter of, these foods were never foods we were consuming in large amounts throughout evolution because we didn't have access to them in those forms. Isoflavones are what most people associate with estrogen. And they're found in soy, peanuts, chickpeas, alfalfa, fava beans, and kudzu. And what these do in regards to studies, reduce fertility in rats, increase cell death in embryos, early puberty for women that were fed soy formula, as well as irregular menstrual cycles, breast cells in male rats, and brain development is obviously affected by estrogen. I'll probably do a whole separate video on soy and estrogen going into that. And another form of estrogen is called lignans, which are found in most grains and flax seeds. And they can be metabolized by intestinal bacteria to the enterolignans, enterodiol, and enterolactone. So they definitely raise levels of these various estrogen hormones. I don't even know if they're hormones actually, but whatever. What this study pretty much says is that it is likely that individual differences in the metabolism of lignans, possibly due to gut microbes, influence the biological activities and health effects of these compounds. Basically saying, we know lignans are measured in higher levels in the blood when we test for them if you consume them, but we don't really know the negative effects of them. Chaconine, which are similar to saponins to my understanding, are found in corn and potatoes and allegedly have beneficial effects of antifungal properties in small doses, but they are toxic in larger doses. I don't really know much about these. You guys can Google them. I just heard about them yesterday. Solanine is another one. It's a glycoalkaloid poison found in species of the nightshade family within the genus Solanum. And if you try to find research on this poison, there's not a lot related to human food ingestion. It's mostly just talking about it from like a botanical point of view. So, I kind of gave you guys most of the anti-nutrients I'm familiar with and kind of a general idea on why we should be avoiding plant foods, at least modern plant foods. A lot of the anti-nutrients in the cruciferous family stem from our transformation of this vegetable into larger amounts that we would never have normally consumed in nature. In nature, we would have consumed a broad variety of wild plants in small amounts. Now, we have isolated a few plants that we're consuming in large amounts that have too many negative things in them. If you consumed 2 or 3 walnuts a day, half of an eggplant the next week, a head of broccoli a week later, that's not going to be negative in any way whatsoever for your health. But once you're eating these modern plant foods and sticking to the same ones in large amounts, you're compounding the negative effects of the anti-nutrients in these vegetables. And while they may have beneficial effects in small amounts, and wild plants and wild foods is really where we need to be in our plant consumption. If you don't really have access to that, yeah, you could try to vary your plant food intake and be all over the board with various types of vegetables, various stages of fermented vegetables, all of those things. But that, in addition to the preparation required for some of these foods, from soaking to fermenting to making things like making naturally fermented sourdough bread or pickling your own vegetables or various fermentation methods, those are things we need to be more involved in, and those really resonate with local food and supporting like sustainable local agriculture. And it's really not in mind with the I want something cheap, quick, and easy to eat. It's really like if you really want to consume a lot of plants in your diet, it's almost like a second job. The amount of food prep you have to do every day, in order for it to be optimally healthy, is exponentially higher than chopping up a few vegetables and throwing them in a blender, which is what most vegans do. So I think I covered all my points fairly well. It's very evident we're not, if you consume 2 or 3 walnuts scavenged in the wilderness a couple times a year versus having a handful of walnuts every single day, that's the difference between why phytic acid might pose a problem in the modern context. It's just really, to sum it up, our modern access to food in the volume that we have is unnatural for all plant foods, and in some cases a lot of animal foods. So if anything's not clear, please let me know, guys. I think I summed things up fairly well. I went to Party City and got these, dude, these glasses were like, I was like $7 for a piece of plastic glasses, and I was like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. And I looked online, they were $7. But I was sitting there at the checkout line in Party City. I was thinking, what the fuck am I doing with my life, man? And the people in front of me, the register took forever, like 10 minutes. So I'm standing there for like 10 minutes contemplating, holding a piece of plastic glasses in my hand. I'm like, am I really gonna buy these stupid glasses that are definitely way too big for my head to look like a nerd to make this video? But from now on, when I do these videos where I'm like talking about like more scientific information and research, I'm gonna cheese it up a little bit.